Hi everyone, nice to see you back again, and this is Pooja Shri, Assistant and Head, Department of Psychology. And for today's class, we are going to see something from the research methodology course, which is simple random sampling. For today's lesson, let's see what are all the advantages that you gain once you completely listen to this particular video of mine. So, you will know the introduction to sampling and you will know the generics of simple random sampling, and we will learn how to do a simple random sampling and the methods of collecting the random sample and the advantages of using simple random sampling and the disadvantages. Fine. Moving on, so in your screen you can see the definition of sampling. So let me take in the key ideas that you need to know when you want to learn about sampling. So it is a statistical process, that's a key term, statistical process of selecting a subset called a sample, and it is selected from a population of interest for which you are going to apply some statistical inferences about that population. So sample is the subset of the population that you are interested in, and the population of interest becomes your capital N, and your sample that you take from that population becomes your small n, and we are making statistical inferences of the population. For example, you are calculating the mean of students who score below 50, mean of students who score above 80 or something. So you are making statistical inferences about the students, about their academic performance in a particular subject. So in order to do that, what you do is that from the population of interest, you select a particular sample so that it is finite in nature and you can easily conduct research. So this process as a whole is called sampling. So now there are so many lot of types of sampling, and this is the first type that will get you started to know more about sampling. So now we are going to see about simple random sampling. As the name suggests, it is going to be simple. So I want you to pay attention throughout this video. So fine. Simple random sampling. So here is the definition of simple random sampling. So it is a sample chosen by the method that ensures randomness. Okay, and here is the important aspect of it. Every unit in your sample has to have equal chance of getting selected in the population. So that ensures randomness of the population. Okay. So here let us see an example. So you can see how the population that you have right here, this is the population that we have, fine. So in the population you can see how some people are neutral, the white ones, the white emojis. You can see the red emojis being one complete emotion, and you can see the blue ones also. But when you take a random population, when you take a random sample out of the all populations that you have, you must have one blue emoticon, one white emoticon and one red emoticon. So every unit in the population will have equal chances of getting selected once you incorporate simple random sampling. Here is another example. So you can see how there is males and females in this population. So once you do simple random sampling, both men and women should have equal chances of getting selected in the samples to ensure randomness of the sample. Fine. Moving on. So now we will see a general demonstration of how random sampling works. So I want you to imagine the jar of candies as the population we are talking about. Okay, in psychology we do researches with human population, but for demonstration sake, let's imagine that you have a jar of candies, for example a gems packet where you have different colors of candies inside the packet. Jar of candies is your capital N, your population, and now you are going to put your hand inside the jar and you are going to take a random number of candies as seen in the screen. So now what happens? You have 30 candies. So your sample size, your small n is equal to 30. Now I want you to answer how many candies have the letter B in it. Okay, when we count it, we have 1, 2, 3 and we have 4 candies. Yes. And now I want you to calculate the proportion of B's in your sample of 30. So in order to calculate proportion, what we have to do is we have to divide the number of B's in the sample divided by the total number of candies in the sample. So when you divide it, you get 4 divided by 30, you get a value of 0.14. So this is the proportion of B's in a sample. And in order for us to talk in terms of percentage, we can see how 14% of candies in B are Bs. Fine. So yes, now we are going to select a second round of samples. You are going to put your samples down in the jar of candies, and then you are again drawing it from the same jar of candies. So you have again a 30 different candies, and now I want you to answer the same question: how many candies have letter B in it? So counting 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 5 candies that has B in it. So when we calculate proportion, let's say 5 divided by 30, which gives us a value of 0.17. Okay, it gives 0.1666. Let's round it up and let's put it under 0.17. So this is the proportion, which means 17% of the candies in our sample has B in it. Fine. So let's take 2 more samples. Fine. So sample 3 and sample 4. So in sample 3 we have 4 Bs, and in sample 4 we have 3 Bs. So calculating the proportion, sample 4 has a proportion of 0.1 and sample 3 has a proportion of 0.14. Okay, 30% of 10% of the population in sample 4 is Bs, and the same goes with the sample 3. So now why are we doing this? Let me explain to you. In research also, we take samples from the population and we do statistical inferences on them, just like we did on jar of candies. Like we have imagined the jar of candies to be population, and what you are taking from the population is the sample. So you have 4 samples in your hands, right? So like the same thing we are going to do in research also. From a set of population, you choose a subsets of population and you are going to do research on it. Fine. Now you have a particular set of values that represents the proportions of samples. So we are measuring the particular characteristic of the sample Bs in the population. So you have the proportions of Bs in every sample that you have, and you have the number of Bs that you have. So once, let's take these 2 values and put it under the graph. You will get a graph like this when you plot it against it. So with the x-axis representing the proportions of Bs and the y-axis representing the frequency in which B is having. For example, let's say B is 4 in number, so the frequency represents that, and the x-axis represents your proportions. So you get something like this. Fine. So when you look at it closely, you can see that it resembles a normal distribution, and when you ask me what normal distribution is, that is for another video. But now let's say that this particular sample that you have chosen is normally distributed. Fine. Yes, and with the top of the graph representing your mean, median and mode. Okay. So this is how random sampling works. So we can see from the 4 samples we chosen from the same jar, we can see that all the values of B averages around 13%. You can see how we are not arriving exactly at 13%, but still we can say approximately that okay fine, B is 13% constituent of the whole population of jar of candies. So that is why to an infinite population we are talking about in research, sampling plays a major role, because we are making an infinite population into a finite population so that you can conduct research. So you can see how taking 4 samples from a same set of population, it ensures randomness, because all the values of proportion circles around 0.13. So this is how simple sampling works. So now we will talk about the general procedure of how you can select a simple random sampling from your population. Fine. So first what you must do is you must define your population. Fine. That is the basics of all research methods that you use. You must define and you must know what you are doing. So when you are doing a research, you must know your target audience and you must know to whom you are going to summarize these results to. So, but you must also make a notion that the more specific that you define your sample, the more narrow your generalizability. Let me explain this to you. For example, let's say that you are doing a research on 11th standard students particularly. Fine. You are narrowly, defining your population to be 11th standard students of Sivagasi, let's say. Now you have arrived at a conclusion that Sivagasi students have good aptitude skills. Now, when you have this result, you can only generate or project these results to the 11th standard students of Sivagasi only. You cannot be applying this particular result to all students of 11th standard all 11 standard students across state. You cannot be comparing this result to the students of Tamil Nadu, to the students of Madurai or to the students of Chennai. I hope you get what I am meaning. So, you must adequately define the population so that you can apply the results over differential populations. Fine. So, the second one is having a sampling frame. Okay. Sampling frame is nothing but the entire list of units that you have in your population. Okay. But the sampling frame should be having two characteristics. It must be recent because your research must be updated to time, and it must also be exhaustive. Exhaustive in the sense you must have all the sampling units listed inside your population. You should not leave a single unit outside your population. Fine. Okay. So, third one is methods. So, you use certain methods to actually take a sample out of a population. In the previous example, the jar of candies example, we just put our hands inside and we take it out. Fine. So, that ensures randomness because you are not using any rules to take sample out of the population. So, there are quite some methods. Let us see two of them in the next slide. So, moving on to procedure number 4, you must contact the members of the sample. So, you are going to do research to all the members of the sample that you have selected. So, you must make sure that everybody is willing to attend your research. Okay. But if you fail to contact any one member of your sampling, what happens is that the representativeness of your sample is at stake. Fine. Going back to the jar of candies example, if you do not have one of the candies, if n size becomes 29, the whole proportionate thing that you do is a waste of time because the n is equal to 30 is not being maintained across samples. You get, I hope you get what I mean. So, it is important for you to contact all the members of your sample to ensure randomness and representations. Fine. Moving on, we have types and methods you can use to generate your random sample. The third method. Fine, we are going to do it. So, types and methods. The first one is obviously a lottery method. So, what we did in our example was a lottery method. You just took a set of sample with no rules and no regulations. Fine. But the second one is called random number tables. Okay. So, you can see how there is a set of numbers in the table. Okay. You can get it anywhere online. So, you can get a PDF of it, you can get images of it. So, you can see how you have random numbers and you can choose your sample accordingly. For example, you can choose the number 1 is going to be on my research and 2 digits across, you can see number 5 on the list. So, 5 will be on my sample. So, you have certain rules, but you follow it on the basis of the table, the random numberedness. Fine. So, there are an endless number of methods that you can use to choose, but the most popular one being the lottery method. Yes. Now, let us review the procedure that we saw. Fine. We are going to apply it to an example to see whether you understood what I am talking about. Fine. So, let us imagine us all being the researchers and you are going to research on the topic effect of TV violence on children. So, this is the topic that you are going to research on. So, you are at the stage of sample selection and sample finalization. So, let us say how we do it with a general procedure. So, can you recall what is in the step number 1? We define the population. So, the research question that we have in hand has children in it. So, you are going to select sample from children. Fine. So, now for my research I am going to say that my sample must have children aging from 5 to 15 years old. So, this is how I narrow my definition to be very specific, and I am also specifying the geographic location of my sample. I am saying in Tamil Nadu. So, what I am meaning is that I am going to do research for all the children in Tamil Nadu ranging from the age 5 to 15. Got it? Fine. So, we have successfully completed stage number 1. So, now after defining this particular sample, you can see how after you get results of this particular research study, you can generalize it to all the children aging from 5 to 15 years old across Tamil Nadu. So, you can say that Tamil Nadu kids are getting affected by TV violence. Fine. Now, we are going to construct a sampling frame. So, in order to attain a complete list of children, I need to have it, the complete list of children ranging from 5 to 15, I need to have all of their names. So, how am I going to get it? So, you can look into census data where you can have demographic details of your sample, you can have how many children are there, and you can also see the birth rate and death rate or whatever. And you can also go get help from the government officials, and they can help you to gain the sampling frame. And yes, the third one is you choose your method of sample selection. So you can use lottery method, you can use random number table, you can even use grid method. Okay, that is also another method. So the fourth one is you contact the parents. Fine, you contact the parents. So because we are talking about children, particularly children, what happens is that children cannot give you consent directly because they don't know. Sometimes people struggle to communicate and such, and they are being dependent on their parents a lot. So what we must do is we must contact their parents and get consent, and we must also get consent from the schools they are particularly belonging to schedule time to do your research. So these are the 4 things that we do with regard to doing the research study on effect of TV violence on children. So I hope you understood it. So yes. So the advantages, fine. Simple random sampling has an advantage in the sense that it has no bias included. Okay, as we saw in the jar of candies, you can see how B is getting selected no matter how many samples that you take. So because all the units in the sample have equal chances of getting selected in a population, so you have no basis of bias getting involved in your sample. And the second one being, you can see how the randomness is ensured in your sample. So anybody can get selected in the sample, that means it represents truth at a lot of times, fine. And also randomness can actually be proportionate to the representativeness we are talking about. Okay, let's say that in this picture you can see how there are status of human beings within our society. You can see high class people, you can see middle class, and you can see low class. There are sections inside our society. When we randomly choose a sample from these sections of society, we must ensure that each sections of the society have equal chance of representation. But what I am talking about becomes a disadvantage also. In these cases, we must use another sampling technique. For the next video, we will talk about it. But yeah, with random sampling, sometimes randomness can constitute to the representativeness of the sample. So the luck factor is included. If you have luck, you might actually get a sample that is representative of the whole population. Disadvantages, yes, obviously it has disadvantages because you must have a full list of population. In the previous example, we were talking about collecting sampling frame from demographic details from your census. But do you think you can actually get the census data easily? The answer is no, you cannot get it easily because you will be dealing with government officials. So it takes time, it takes your money and whatever to get the whole sampling frame of all the children in Tamil Nadu, which is difficult, yeah. And if your units, especially your units, are heterogeneous, like this example we were talking about where I wanted to do a study from 5 to 15 age gap. So you can see how differences in the group can be seen. So a 5-year kid might be different from a 15-year-old kid, but I am putting them all in the same sample. So when samples are heterogeneous and you are giving the same modality of research to all of them, there might be an issue. And there can be sample selection bias also. Sometimes when you don't do it, with the luck factor included I was telling you in the last slide, and that luck, if your luck is not with you, your sample might be biased. And it is so time consuming. You cannot be looking at all the table of numbers and you can be selecting it. So it takes a lot of time. And it also takes a lot of your economic resources also to attain a sampling frame, to do sampling. It has time resources and economic resources getting expended. So yes, when you go through research or when you study research methods, you can see how difficult research is, and sometimes you can even lose a point of value of doing research. But whenever I get reminded of this, I get reminded of this particular quote that I have displayed here. No research is ever quite complete. Yeah, that's true. Every research has disadvantages, every research has some weak points that cannot be expressed. But it's a glory of a good bit of work that it opens a way for something still better. So every research has its flaws, but every research contributes a little bit to the known knowledge of humankind. So believing that, let's do research a lot and let's learn a lot to contribute to your academic field. Thank you and have a nice day.